Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, and welcome to another weekend book review. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
Today, we're going to be diving into this fascinating world captured in the book Begums, Thugs, and Englishmen.
Okay.
This book is a collection of writings by Fanny Parkes,
Right.
a British woman who traveled extensively through India in the early 19th century.
Yeah, Parkes' writings offer a really unique perspective on this period when India was undergoing a lot of change.
Yeah.
Not only do we get to see the cultural landscape of the time, but also how British colonialism was impacting, everyday life.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Parkes also wrote about the colonial,
Right.
which, as many of you know, is currently happening in Prayagraj.
That's right. And what makes her observations about the Kumela even more intriguing is that she lived through a period when the British Raj imposed tax on devotees attending the festival.
A tax?
Yeah.
That seems pretty unbelievable.
I know.
Tell me more about that.
So Parkes mentions that during the British Raj, each devotee attending the Kumela had to pay 1 rupee as a tax. It might sound like a small amount, but in those days it was a significant sum for many pilgrims.
1 rupee back then could have been a day's wages or more, right?
Absolutely. The British saw this tax as a way to kind of exert their authority and capitalize on these massive crowds that the festival was attracting.
Right.
But for the devotees, it was a financial burden.
Yeah.
Especially considering many traveled from far and wide to participate in the Kumbh Mela.
Yeah, it really highlights the power dynamics at play during that time.
For sure.
So what happened to this tax after India gained independence?
Well, one of the key changes in post-independence India was the abolishment of this Kumbh Mela tax. It was a really symbolic act that resonated with the people.
Right.
Signifying the end of colonial exploitation and the beginning of this new era of religious freedom.
That's a powerful story. It really shows how deeply entwined religion and politics can be, especially during times of significant change.
Yeah.
And to think we get a glimpse of this through the eyes of someone who lived through it.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that Parkes didn't just stick to the usual, British social circles.
Right.
She ventured beyond those confines, and she really immersed herself in Indian society.
Okay.
Her writing offers a glimpse into this world that's often overlooked in these traditional historical narratives.
So she wasn't just attending fancy dinners and socializing with other British folks.
Not at all. She attended a Churik puja,
Okay.
which is a ritual where men swing from hooks embedded in their flesh as a form of penance.
Oh, wow.
And she even saw instances where people were paid to endure this pain on behalf of wealthier individuals.
That sounds incredibly intense.
It is.
It's a far cry from the typical image of a British woman in India during that time.
It is, and her observations go beyond just rituals. She contrasts European and Indian attire, even criticizing the restrictive nature of European clothing.
Okay.
She found beauty in the flowing drapery of what she called Asiatics, believing it allowed for more grace and movement.
It sounds like she was quite a free spirit, especially for a woman of her time.
Yeah.
Did her experiences and observations influence her views on British rule in India?
It's difficult to say for certain, but her writings do reveal a nuanced perspective.
Okay.
She observed the opulence and the joy of the people in the Kingdom of Oudh,
Right.
which was independent at the time.
Okay.
And she contrasted it with the conditions she saw in areas under British control.
That's an interesting observation. It suggests she wasn't entirely blind to the impact of British colonialism.
Precisely, she even critiques Lord William Bentinck, the Governor General at the time, for abolishing the vaccine department as a cost-saving measure,
Wow.
linking it to the deaths of many from smallpox.
Her willingness to critique British policies, even indirectly, sets her apart from many of her contemporaries.
I think so.
It sounds like she was trying to capture the true essence of India, not just the version that fit the British narrative.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it's this unique perspective that makes Parkes' writings so valuable.
Yeah.
She wasn't afraid to look beyond the surface and grapple with the complexities of what she saw.
Speaking of complexity, Parkes also wrote about a fascinating and, let's be honest, rather disturbing aspect of Indian society during that time.
Oh.
The thugs.
Ah, yes, the thugs. These were secret societies of robbers and assassins who were both feared and shrouded in mystery.
Right.
Parkes recounts many tales of their gruesome activities based on what she heard and observed.
Now, I have to admit, I find this topic rather intriguing.
Yeah.
What made the thugs so terrifying?
Their methods were incredibly chilling. They often disguise themselves as fellow travelers,
Oh, wow.
befriending their victims before strangling them with silk scarves and stealing your possessions.
Oh, my God.
According to Parkes, they were masters of deception and incredibly skilled at avoiding detection.
It's those unexpected details that make their crimes even more disturbing.
Right.
They weren't just common bandits.
No.
Or calculated and methodical.
Exactly. And Parkes' inclusion of these accounts, even if based on hearsay, speaks volumes about the anxieties and uncertainties of the time. It's a reminder that life in 19th century India wasn't always about grand ceremonies and cultural exchanges.
Yeah.
There were dark undercurrents as well.
It makes you wonder how Parkes, as a British woman traveling alone, navigated the challenges of 19th century India.
Right.
It couldn't have been easy.
You're right. She faced numerous obstacles, from unfamiliar social customs to the dangers of banditry and wild animals.
Yeah.
And she did all this without the conveniences we take for granted today. No GPS, no internet, no easy communication.
It's mind-boggling to think about. It really emphasizes her adventurous spirit and resilience.
Absolutely. She relied on a network of servants and guides and the occasional British official to navigate her journeys.
Okay.
She mentions moments of fear, especially during encounters with wild animals or when traveling through areas known for banditry.
Yeah,
But overall, she seems to relish the challenges and embrace the unexpected.
that's quite a spirit. She sounds like she was ready for anything.
Parkes writes about riding elephants, sailing on the Ganges, and even trying her hand at hunting with a cheetah.
Wait a cheetah. Tell me more about that. I never knew cheetahs were used for hunting in India.
It's a fascinating part of Indian history. Parkes describes witnessing a hunt organized by her friend Colonel William Linnaeus Gardner, a British mercenary who had fully embraced Indian culture.
Okay.
He actually had a hunting cheetah as a pet.
Wow.
And she observed the cheetah being released from a cart and chasing down an antelope with incredible speed.
What a sight that must have been. Sounds like she had some incredible experiences during her travels.
She did, and her relationship with Colonel Gardner is particularly intriguing. You know, he embodies the complexities of cultural exchange during the Raj. He had spent decades in India serving various rulers and amassing a fortune, all while deeply immersing himself in Indian culture.
So he wasn't your typical British officer.
Not at all.
He seems to have gone beyond just adapting to the local customs.
That's right. He was often criticized, even ostracized by some within the British community for his close ties to Indian society. They viewed him as having gone native, which was considered scandalous back then.
It seems like he challenged the very notion of British superiority that was so prevalent at the time.
He did, and Parkes clearly admired him for it. She describes him as a man of great intelligence and in mind playful as a child, and speaks fondly of her visits to his home in Kasganj.
Okay.
It's through their friendship that we get an even deeper look into Indian society, especially the world within the Zanat, the women's quarters.
Zananas have always held a certain mystique in Western culture,
Right.
often portrayed as places of exotic mystery.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing Parkes' account is a bit different.
You're right. Parkes goes beyond those Orientalist fantasies.
Okay.
She focuses on the everyday lives of the women she met, their conversations, relationships, and experiences. She observed everything from elaborate beauty rituals to the creation of intricate textiles and even the power dynamics within those spaces.
It sounds like she was really trying to understand the complexities of these women's lives.
Yeah.
Stripping away the misconceptions and presenting a more humanized portrait.
She was, and it's through these detailed observations that we gain a deeper understanding not just of individual lives, but of the broader societal structures and cultural norms of 19th century India.
I'm already fascinated by everything we've uncovered, and it feels like we've only just scratched the surface of Fanny Parkes' incredible journey.
That's the beauty of deep dives like this. There's always more to explore, more to learn, and more to ponder.
Right.
And Parkes' story is a treasure trove of fascinating insights.
It's amazing how Parkes was able to gain access to these private spaces. I mean, she was a British woman in a society that was largely segregated by gender.
Right. That's where her friendship with Colonel Gardner truly comes into play. You see, Gardner's wife, Mukhopadhyay, was a Mughal princess,
Okay.
the niece of Emperor Akbar Shah II.
Hold on. He was married to a Mughal princess.
He was.
That's quite a statement, especially given the social climate at the time.
It was a union that certainly raised eyebrows among both the British and Indians. But for Parkes, it opened news to a world that few outsiders, especially women, ever got to see.
So tell me about Mukhopadhyay. What was she like?
Parkes describes her as a woman of exceptional beauty and grace. She even compares Begum's posture and gait to that of European women, finding the princess's movements far more natural and elegant.
There's that critique of restrictive European clothing. Again, it seems like Parkes was deeply observant of these cultural nuances.
She was, and she doesn't just focus on appearances. She also highlights Begum's intelligence and wit, describing their conversations as lively and engaging, covering topics ranging from cultural customs to politics and even religion.
It sounds like they had a genuine friendship, a real connection that went beyond just social pleasantries.
It seems that way. Parkes even attended the wedding of Colonel Gardner's granddaughter, Susan Gardner, to a young Mogul prince.
Oh, yeah.
It was an incredibly lavish affair, as you can imagine, but it also reveals a lot about the complexities of the time.
Oh, yes. I remember reading about that wedding as a grand spectacle.
Yeah.
Tell me more about it. What kind of complexities did it reveal?
Well, for starters, Colonel Gardner himself had reservations about the marriage. As Parkes explains, he would have preferred his granddaughter to marry a European man.
Right.
But Begum was insistent that Susan should marry into a prestigious Mughal family.
It sounds like a clash of cultures, a microcosm of the larger tensions between the British and Indians during that period.
Exactly. And remember, this was a time when the British were actively asserting their dominance over Indian society.
Right.
So a marriage between a British woman and a Mughal prince was a bold statement, a challenge to the established social order.
It really makes you think about the individual stories that often get lost in the grand narratives of history.
It does.
Here we have these two families connected by marriage, navigating the complexities of cultural identity and political power.
It's a reminder that history is not just about dates and battles. It's about the lives of people and how they grapple with the challenges and opportunities of their time.
Parkes was clearly drawn to these personal stories. It's what makes her writing so compelling. We get to see history unfold through the eyes of someone who is living it, experiencing the joys, the sorrows, and the everyday realities of 19th century India.
And she doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of that reality. In fact, she dedicates a significant portion of her writing to the poverty disease and even death that she witnessed during her travels.
It's a stark reminder that life back then was often harsh and unforgiving, especially for those who are marginalized or less fortunate.
She describes encountering beggars suffering from leprosy, witnessing the devastating effects of cholera outbreaks, and even coming across the aftermath of a fatal wolf attack on a child. These weren't isolated incidents, they were woven into the fabric of everyday life.
It's easy to romanticize the past.
Right.
But Parkes' writing reminds us that it was also a time of great suffering and hardship. It must have been quite challenging for her to reconcile these harsh realities with her adventurous spirit and her fascination with Indian culture.
It was a balancing act for sure, but she approaches these difficult topics with a sense of empathy and a desire to understand the systemic factors that contributed to these hardships.
Did she ever place blame on the British for any of these issues? I mean, they were the ones in control, weren't they?
She doesn't explicitly condemn British rule, but her observations often implicitly challenge the narrative of British benevolence that was so prevalent at the time.
Right.
Remember her criticism of Lord William Bentinck for abolishing the vaccine department?
Yeah.
That's a clear example of her holding the British accountable for the consequences of their policies.
That's a good point. It shows that she wasn't afraid to criticize her own countrymen when she saw injustice or negligence.
Exactly. She was a keen observer and wasn't afraid to speak truth to power, even if it meant questioning the actions of her own government.
It's this willingness to look beyond the surface, to challenge assumptions, and to grapple with difficult truths that makes Fanny Parkes such a fascinating figure.
And it's what makes her story so relevant. Even today, she reminds us that history is not just a collection of facts and dates. It's a tapestry woven from individual experiences, perspectives, and choices.
And sometimes those individual stories can illuminate a period of history in ways that traditional narratives often miss.
Absolutely. It's the personal touches, the observations of everyday life, the glimpses into the hearts and minds of people from different walks of life that truly bring history to life. And that's precisely what Fanny Parkes offers us through her remarkable writings.
It's been a real privilege to delve into Fanny Parkes' world with you. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of 19th century India beyond usual historical narratives.
I agree. Parkes' story is a reminder that there's always more to discover, more to learn, and more to question, and her journey, with all its complexities and contradictions, offers us a valuable lens through which to view a pivotal period in history.
It's incredible to think that Parkes documented all of this, capturing those intimate moments alongside these grand historical events. It's a unique blend of personal narrative and social commentary.
Yeah, it is, and it allows us to connect with her on this human level, to see India through her eyes, experiencing both its beauty and its hardships.
Speaking of hardships, I'm curious about how Parkes felt upon returning to England after nearly 2 decades in India. It must have been a culture shock.
You're right, after almost 20 years, Parkes returned to England in 1845.
Okay.
And as she notes in her journal, it wasn't the triumphant homecoming she might have expected.
Oh.
She found England cold, dreary, lacking the vibrancy and warmth she had grown accustomed to in India.
That's a bit heartbreaking. It sounds like she left a piece of herself behind in India.
It seems that way. Her writings express this deep longing for the land and the people she had come to know and love. It's as if a part of her never truly left.
You know, it strikes me that Fanny Parkes' story, while set in the 19th century, still resonates with us today. Her experiences, her observations, and her willingness to challenge conventions feel surprisingly modern.
I agree. She reminds us that history is more than just dates and battles. It's about people, their experiences, their relationships, and their perspectives. It's about understanding the complexities of human interaction and cultural exchange, even amidst a backdrop of colonialism.
And it's about questioning the narratives we've been told, isn't it? Parkes certainly defied the stereotypes of what a British woman in 19th century India was supposed to be.
Absolutely. She reminds us to look beyond the surface, to seek out diverse perspectives, and to challenge our own assumptions. She wasn't afraid to step outside her comfort zone, to embrace the unfamiliar, and to question the status quo.
Her story also highlights the importance of empathy and understanding, especially when encountering cultures that are different from our own. She didn't just observe, she sought to connect, to learn, and to build relationships across cultural boundaries.
And through her writing, she invites us to do the same, to approach history with curiosity, to engage with different perspectives, and to recognize the shared humanity that connects us all, regardless of time or place.
Well, I think that's a beautiful sentiment to end on. Fanny Parkes' story is a testament to the power of curiosity, empathy, and the human spirit. It's a reminder that there's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to understand about the world and the people in it.
A final thought for you as we wrap up our deep dive. What narratives shape your understanding of the world? Are you willing to question those narratives, to seek out different perspectives, and to embrace the complexities of the human experience?
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this journey through 19th century India with Fanny Parkes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more captivating deep dives like this one. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.